By the late 1980s, Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior, was seen as the WWE's next face of the company, the one Hulk Hogan could pass the torch to and lead the WWE in the 90s, culminating in one of the biggest main events in WrestleMania history at WrestleMania 6. Yet only a few years later, the Ultimate Warrior would be out of the WWE, as his backstage heat with Vince McMahon would boil over. This is Real Feuds, Ultimate Warrior vs. Vince McMahon. The Ultimate Warrior would come into the WWE in the mid-80s from World Class Championship Wrestling. At first he was billed as the Dingo Warrior during house shows, but as he went on TV, he soon switched to the Ultimate Warrior. Vince McMahon saw a star in the making and pushed him to a meteoric rise up the card, defeating the Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam in 1988. Warrior's charisma was a hit with young fans, and that meant massive merchandise sales for the WWE. Ultimate Warrior's rise to the main event led to one of the biggest main events in WWE history, WrestleMania 6. Billed as the Ultimate Challenge, it was babyface vs. babyface, as Intercontinental Champion Ultimate Warrior went toe-to-toe against WWE Champion Hulk Hogan. At the sold-out Skydome in Toronto, the two towering figures would bring down the house in a match where Warrior would defeat Hogan and hold both titles. Warrior would carry the WWE title for 293 days, dropping it to Sergeant Slaughter at the 1991 Royal Rumble, when Randy Savage interfered in the match. After the match, the Ultimate Warrior would rush backstage after Savage. Confronting him, he challenged the Macho Man to a retirement match. At WrestleMania 7, the Ultimate Warrior would square off against Macho Man Randy Savage in their retirement match. Considered one of the best matches in Mania history, Warrior would defeat Macho Man. After the match, there would be the memorable cap-off with Savage reuniting with Miss Elizabeth. Later that night, Hogan would go on to defeat Slaughter in the poorly received main event. Hogan and Warrior were set to tag team together at SummerSlam 1991 against the Triangle of Terror, which featured Sergeant Slaughter, General Adnan, and Colonel Mustafa, aka the Iron Sheik. Backstage at the time, Hellwig was growing increasingly frustrated with pay compared to his fellow top stars. He wanted the same deal Hogan had. Hellwig even wrote a letter to Vince with his list of demands, threatening to hold up TV and even SummerSlam. On July 10, 1991, the WWE received a letter with Hellwig's demands. The letter stated that Warrior was just as important, if not more important, than Hulk Hogan, as well as a demand for $550,000 for WrestleMania 7, and stated that he can stay at home until he gets his demands. Of course, the last person that likes to be demanded to do anything is Vince McMahon, but he also wants the SummerSlam match to happen, so he placated Warrior's demands with a letter of his own on July 13, 1991, stating that he'd pay him more for the pay-per-views and pay him a higher merchandising rate as well, going on to say that he had the utmost appreciation for Hellwig as a performer and as a man. After the match at SummerSlam, it was a different story. Warrior came backstage and Vince fired him on the spot. According to Jake the Snake Roberts, who was set for a post-SummerSlam title feud with Warrior, Vince handed Hellwig a letter and told him to get the F out of his building. The letter would cite Hellwig's unprofessionalism and lay out that the fame Hellwig received because of Vince went to his head, even stating that he's become a legend only in his own mind. The Ultimate Warrior wouldn't be gone too long from the WWE. With Hogan planning to take time off in the wake of the steroid scandal, Vince reached out to Hellwig in an attempt to keep the product going during a lull. Warrior would make his comeback at WrestleMania 8, running in to save Hogan from Sid Justice and Papa Shango. He'd go on to be a featured player on the roster, including a title match against Macho Man Randy Savage at SummerSlam. While he didn't win the belt, he did win the match via countout. The relationship between Warrior and McMahon would remain bumpy. Conan on his podcast talks about his time in WWE in 1992 and 1993. He mentions late one night Warrior and Vince coming out of the promo booth. Conan described the scene and his reaction. I remember Ultimate Warrior coming out of the thing and he was like, F this, F that. And Vince was like, calm down, Warrior, it's okay. You can do it tomorrow if you want to, calm down. He was basically kissing this guy's ass while the guy was cutting a promo on him in front of everybody. And I was thinking to myself, wow, this guy must make Vince a lot of money for him to let him talk to him like that in front of everyone else. Macho Man and the Ultimate Warrior were set to team up at Survivor Series against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. But before that, Warrior was popped for allegedly using steroids. Given the steroid trial, there were no risks worth taking, so Vince McMahon suspended Hellwig. In turn, Hellwig no-showed events and McMahon promptly fired him. While gone from the WWE, Hellwig would legally change his name to Warrior, adding another wrinkle into the saga between him and Vince McMahon. The on-off-again affair would pick back up in 1996, when Vince brought back Warrior for a short run that really didn't go anywhere. Warrior would come back to beat Triple H at WrestleMania 12, but that was about it in terms of bigger matches. Vince was upset that Warrior didn't attend several house shows, so Vince got rid of him once again, and made the stipulation that if Warrior did ever wrestle for him again, he'd have to post a bond before any future bookings, to ensure that he'd show up. Where this matter gets a little bit more contentious is that Hellwig claims his no-shows were due to his father's death and the emotional fallout, while Vince didn't buy this, and said that Hellwig hadn't spoken to his father in over 10 years. Throughout 1996 and 1998, the two would be involved in legal battles over the usage of the Warrior name and gimmick. The judge would ultimately rule in favor of Warrior, allowing him usage of the guise with face paint and tassels and to call himself the Warrior in the ring. Tensions would simmer over the next several years, but Vince McMahon is not one to let a grudge go easily. In the early 2000s, WWE was working on an Ultimate Warrior DVD. Vince reached out to Warrior to be a part of it. Warrior declined. Just like the Bret Hart DVD released 2 months after this one, you have to think that if Warrior did accept, it would have been a much kinder depiction of Hellwig and his character. Instead, the hour-and-a-half documentary was nothing more than a burial of the Ultimate Warrior as a gimmick and Hellwig as a man. The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior was released on September of 2005. It featured the documentary alongside a few of Warrior's top matches. The documentary would cover Warrior's early career and his time in the WWE. Most of the documentary was filled with insults and jokes about the Ultimate Warrior.
If I thought he was a great interviewer or thought he said something that had any kind of merit, I would have remembered it.
But occasionally there would be a compliment here and there.
Great body. You know, he's got hair like a rocker.
However, most of it's talking heads ripping into how bad Warrior was in the ring, how dumb his promos were, and minimizing his impact on the WWE as much as possible, even downplaying the importance of WrestleMania 6 and the passing of the torch.
Hogan hand-fed this guy and made the Ultimate Warrior.
Because of this hatchet job by WWE, Hellwig would sue the company for defamation in 2006. The case would stall and later be thrown out by an Arizona judge in 2009. To everyone's surprise, Vince and the Ultimate Warrior would smooth things over. Warrior was a part of the 2014 WWE Hall of Fame class. The old documentary was taken off the WWE Network. They'd even set up the Warrior Award, which was given out annually at the Hall of Fame to highlight heroic deeds. From WrestleMania glory to backstage squabbles over money, countless return attempts to producing a documentary just to bury a guy, the Ultimate Warrior and Vince McMahon's real-life feud had a lot of ups and downs before finally putting things past them.